From time to time, one of the things you will need to be able to do is you will need to be able to express numbers that are written in one way in another way. And a pretty common thing that you'll run across is sometimes they'll give you a decimal, and for one reason or another, you'll need to be able to express it as a fraction. One example of that I can think of is occasionally you'll see things in science where they'll express things in inches, but they'll be written in a decimal form. And if you're trying to actually figure out what that is on an imperial ruler, guess what? You're going to need to put it into eighths or sixteenths or some kind of fraction that you can figure out, or fourths or halves or something that we know how to express and we know how to measure. So I'm going to show you a pretty basic technique that works pretty well. It's very helpful if you have an understanding of place value when you do this. So when we talk about place value really quick, I'm gonna just say, we're gonna say, supposing we have this number right here. So when you talk about place value to the right of the decimal, all right, I know that this one to the left of the decimal, I know that this is my ones place. All right, and the weird thing about the decimal is a lot of people think, well, the decimal, then everything just repeats itself but goes backwards. Not really, because if it did that, then you would have something called a oneths place. And we don't have that. It goes from ones to tenths. All right, so if you can remember that, then you're good. And then, yes, it does kind of go backwards from the way it goes this way, and then they go that way instead. So this place is called your tenths, right? This one is called our hundredths. And basically, it's what we know about the way they go to the left, except that you have that TH after the end of them. This would be your thousandths, right? And then this last one that I got listed here would be your 10,000ths. And if I kept going, it would just keep going up. So knowing that is really helpful when we're talking about how to write these things as fractions. So the first thing I want to point out is that when you look at this thing before the decimal, that's always going to stay the same thing when you write a fraction. You're always going to just write it as this. So a real common example is 2.5. A lot of people see that and they go, oh, that's 2.5. Well, the reason that's 2.5 is because this 2 just stays a 2. And then that 0.5 can be written as 5 tenths, or 5 over 10. And then you can simplify that to 2 and 1/2. Similarly, the example I have written up here, 2.6, you would just take your 2 and you'd write it out like that. And then this is 6, and it stops, my fraction stops in this position, which is, as we know, the tenths places. So it would be 2 and 6 tenths. So the thing is, if you can say it, you can write it. The other thing to do is if you can't say it, and this is the trick I tell people who really struggle with place value, is count how many places you have after the decimal. So in this one we have 1, and that's how many zeros you're going to have after your 1 in your denominator. It really is that simple. So 2 and then 6 tenths. And then so let's rewrite that. You can divide both 6 and 10 by 2 and get 2 and 3/5. That is my simplified mixed number. All right, it is now written as a fraction, and you're in good shape. So let's take a look at a couple others. So 17.72. So as we said about the whole numbers, in other words, anything to the left of the decimal, just leave it. So we're going to have 17, and then we know that 72 is going to be my top number. What's it going to go over? Well, if you can say it, it's 72 hundredths. That tells you what it goes over. It goes over 100. If you can't say it, you say, okay, I've got 1, 2 spaces after the decimal right here, right? So that means I'm going to put my 1 here, and then I'm going to put 2 zeros. All right? And I'll give you a hint. You will always have fewer digits up here than you will here when you do this way. Okay? So If you find yourself going 72 over 10, you should, whoa, wait a minute. I think I need another 0 there, right? So 17 and 72 100ths. Let's start simplifying that. Well, I know that 72 is divisible by 2, so let's start with that. So that's going to give me 36, and 100 is divisible by 2, and that gives me 50. Well, we can keep going, right? I don't know why that happens. I do this from time to time, and it completely confuses me. All right? So let's divide them both by 2 again. And then you get 18/25. And that looks pretty simplified. I don't think I can get anything else out of there. They don't share any other factors. So we got 1, 2, 3, 6, and 9, and 18 for those factors, and then none of those are factors of 25. So your final answer is going to be 17 and 18/25. All right, let's see if we got another example. Oh, yes, we do. All right, this is a good one. All right, so this one, most of you probably would have a hard time saying this and would have to think about this. So this would be a good one just to do the 0 trick, right? And I don't have a whole on this one, so I'm not going to have, it's not going to be a mixed number. It's just going to be a fraction. So I know I'm going to start with this number over something. So I'm going to put my 1, and then I'm going to count how many places I have. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 places, and that's how many zeros I have. So I would say it as 6,004 10,000ths. And, but that's, it's a little complicated to say. So in simplifying this, well, one of the divisibility rules I know is that if anything ends in a number that is divisible by 4, the whole number is divisible by 4. So what I would do is, let's see if I can do this, is I would take a calculator and I would say, okay, I'm going to take 6,004 and I'm going to divide it by 4 and see what I get. And I get 1501. And I go, okay, cool, great. So I'm going to have 1501. And then I just know, because I've done this before, I know that if I divide 10,000 by 4, I'm going to get 2,500. Okay? And then at this point, I would want to ask myself, well, are there any other factors between this and between 1501, 1,501, and 2,500? And that's something that you would probably play around with for a bit, but for the most part, that's simplified. So we're going to call this good. They're usually not this ugly. So, but I just wanted to show you how to find your starting point before you simplify it. So I hope this makes sense to you and isn't too confusing. Again, just if you have a hard time saying what the place values are, just do the counting trick. So go to the right of the decimal, count how many numbers are written, and then for your denominator, you'll put your 1 down and then follow it with that many zeros. So good luck with these.